Hello, lovely loves. Today I wanted to talk about another stream, and this is going to be on homeschooling, but really more importantly, it's just on teaching children. And I want to say, especially brown and black children, but to be honest, it could be with any child. It's just that that's what my experience is in with my own children. And so I wanted to talk about today reading and how to facilitate reading in your child. And this doesn't even need to really apply to homeschooling parents as much as it could be any parent, because as we all know, the school system is failing our children. So, just to throw some statistics out there, 82% of black fourth graders are reading below proficiency. So I want to just take a moment to share my thoughts on how we, as parents of beautiful, brilliant black children, can work together to turn that tide. So let's get into it. So I want to call this series Rise, Read, and Repeat. And the reason why I want to say you're rising, reading, and repeating is because this is something that you're going to be doing repeatedly. And consistency is what really gives you results as far as teaching your child to read or really learning to do anything. But I'm going to go ahead and say I've had the joy of it's been just so great to be able to teach my children to read. My youngest right now is 5, and then I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so let's go ahead and dive deep, but we're going to start from the beginning. So this video is going to really just be focused on birth to toddler. So we'll do 0 to 1, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. So we'll just talk about those 3 stages specifically in this video. And then I'll do another video for the middle range, and then I'll do another video like upper elementary range, another video for middle school, and then finally a final video for high school. So I guess it'll be 4 videos. Okay, so let's go ahead. Babyhood to age 1. So before we even get into reading or teaching letters, it really just starts out with language. There's a book that I read early on, actually with my 3rd child, so called 30 Million Words. And it brings it home. It really talks about how children with a wider range of vocabulary are automatically set up to be better readers and even better learners later on in life. So it kind of references how when you're from a fluent background and you have more of a wider range of vocabulary, so that 30 million words is really, there's 30 million more words that affluent children are hearing in their everyday life than if you are a struggling minority child. And part of it is because you don't even have a parent around you. A lot of the time, maybe you're in daycare, maybe someone's watching you, you're just watching TV, the TV is watching your child, and you're at work. So it just talks about how there's just this wide gap and how it really starts with that vocabulary from age 0 to 1. So there's kind of 3 things that you can do to kind of help to mitigate that issue. But first, I just want to give my personal story. Like when I was pregnant with my last child, I was told, hey, just read to your child when you're pregnant. I was a little bit stressed out due to my work at the time. And they were like, just read to your child while you're pregnant. Just read the Bible and, your baby's listening. And it's true. Your baby is listening. So talking to your baby, even before birth, when they're born, it's really good. You can narrate your day. You can speak with warmth and intention. You can ask them questions. And even though they aren't answering you back with language, maybe they're just smiling or gargling because their babies aren't talking yet, you can still talk to them and use that language while they're babies. Reading aloud daily is also important. And it doesn't have to be something that they understand or not. You can even be reading a novel that maybe you're reading, assuming it's not too, profane or something. Because I really do think that you should even stay away from that even when they are babies. Like, don't put your baby in front of violence or anything. And hopefully you are reading as a parent, because I think that that's another thing that I should probably have put in here that's not part of that 3 things to do, and that is mirroring reading to your child. So if your child sees you reading, they're going to be much more likely to say, hey, reading is something I might want to do as well. So mirroring is really important. And this is through all stages. All the stages I talk about today and every other time I talk on this series just on reading specifically, that you can always do mirroring for your child. So reading aloud daily is number 2. Number 3 is singing rhymes. And just singing in general and rhyming. You know, the nursery rhymes are good. And they're classic because they help with auditory pattern recognition and skills. And I would also say to be mindful of just sitting your child in front of, what is that called? Like Lululemon, or, you know, one of those high frequency of moving of screens and colors in front of your child. And because the issue with that is if you have your child sitting in front of one of those high frequency, it starts to put into them attention issues, because the only way they're keeping their attention is by all of this constant implementation. Like they're constantly stimulating them, and once you get used to having that kind of stimulation, the visual stimulation, it's hard to kind of wean your child out of it. So I would caution against having them on there all the time. I mean, of course, I'm not going to say my child never watched it, because they did, but I made sure to limit it, and I didn't just sit them in front of it all day, because I will say that the more that you do that, the harder it is for you to have regular time with them. And also it messes with their mood and their irritability, because they're just used to all this stimulation, and it overstimulates them. So the babyhood to age 1, talking to your baby, reading aloud daily, no matter what it is, you know, within reason, and then singing rhymes. Number 2. So this will be early toddlerhood, ages 1 to 2. So this is when they start walking and they're exploring everything. So this is where you can kind of work on your vocabulary, because you can start naming things for them as they're walking around and they're touching it, or they're putting it in their mouth, or they're starting to, hopefully they're kind of over that, because that kind of is a little bit more on the baby age when they're crawling, but you never know. So singing ABCs. Because you're already singing to them, you're singing rhymes, you can start singing the ABC song. And I believe that toddlers can learn their letter names and their sounds early. I don't think that you have to separate the two. I will show you how I separate them. They are separated, but they can be learned simultaneously. So 1 to 2, you can sing the song, because it's just a song that they memorize. And there's nothing wrong with them memorizing a song, especially one that's helpful for them to learn how to read. So you can memorize the ABC song. You ask simple questions while you're reading, because you're still reading aloud to them. But now you may be reading something more intentional at their level. So you might say, oh, what's on the cover of this book? Oh, well, how many times did this person say no or yes? And whenever you're doing something like that, like maybe you'll say, what color is his shirt? And maybe it's written on it. And then they'll say, well, I don't know. And you'll say, well, it's a green. That color is green. And then you point to the word. So then they start to see, or maybe they, you know, what's the word that's using for this giant? Oh, it's big. Big and giant go together. And it says it here in the book. And then you can kind of point to that and talk about that, because you're building vocabulary, and you're also building the knowledge of reading into them, because you're showing them these words correlate also with things in the picture, with correlates also with things in real life that we're talking about. Like this color correlates to maybe something you're wearing now, or the grass outside, and that's what it looks like in print. And that's how the word starts and ends, and the space in between them is, you know, 2 different words. Also building vocabulary through real life play. So you can use everyday moments to introduce new words. For instance, if your toddler loves boats, you can talk about sails, rudders, or you can just talk about how things float when they're on a boat. And that's why it's a boat. It's floating on the water. My youngest loved cars, so around this age, we did all types of things on vehicles, where We talk about vans, tow trucks, motorcycles. We even talked about other forms of transportations, airplanes, boats, trains. And later this fuels their reading comprehension just by going over this just as a thing to show. And then, at this point they're starting to talk a little bit. So preschool age, which is the age that my youngest just got out of, this is where really it was probably around 2.5 is when we kind of started this. But we started introducing the sounds, not just the letters. So we had flashcards with each letter, but we only focused on the letter sound. And then at the end, he would sing the ABC song, and we had this pillow, which had all of the ABCs list on it. We would sing the song, and he would point to each letter in the ABC song, the letter name. But he would go through the flashcards and say all of the letter sounds, just the sounds. So he knew the sound that it made. And we also did do 2 sounds for the vowels, which really, once we start reading, which I'll talk about in a later video, we do focus on just the short at the beginning, the short vowels. But we still learned both during our flashcard time, so that he at least knew, hey, this can make more than one sound. And then, because later he may use the incorrect sound when reading, and you can say, oh, that's great, but that actually only makes that sound if there's 2 of them together. Like, for instance, maybe it's lead and he says lead, and you'll say, oh, well, that's right, but there's an EA there, because if it's just the one thing in there, it's going to be short, but if it has something else, it may be the long version of it. That might not have been the best one. Maybe set, seat, same thing, EA there. So the next one is to raise the level of reading comprehension. So you keep reading, but now you're asking them to think, well, what's going to happen next? And then you can try to get them to pick out repeating words. You know what they can handle, so you know maybe what they're interested in and what you want to talk about. And this is also when you start really working on the hand fine motor skills. So you start trying to have them drawing, writing. We used a lot of the paint dots at age really like 2.5 to 3, where we would do the dots of, you find all the A's, there's a capital A, now you found all the lowercase a. There's, that type of thing. And then even pictures that we would draw that way. So the key message here is that in each level, there's like 3 things you can kind of do. And really, these things don't take a lot of time. Not at all. You can spend 15 minutes a day doing this with your child. Maybe 20 minutes if you want to do the books and read more into the books. But it's all about consistency. If you're doing this 3 to 4 days a week, consistently, you're building up that child. And the more the better. Like, the more consistent you can be, even if it's 15 minutes a day. But say every morning. Why I say rise is we just do this in the morning. We get up, we get together. My youngest gets up before my other 2 anyway, so he's here, he's asking questions. Okay, why don't we take some time to read? Why don't we go over your flashcards? Why don't we sing the ABC song? We'll sing the other songs too, the Days of the Week song. And then we have a little thing that we get out and we go over, what's the weather like out? What season is it? What's the day of the week? So, all that stuff is like, it's like the circle time that they do in preschool. You can do that really from 2 to 4. It's like the time you can kind of do all that stuff and just work on it with them. And then I know with boys specifically, their fine motor skills are not quite as in tuned as girls, or it comes in later, I should say. I think it generally comes in a little later with boys. So, not stressing them out with it because they are only 3 or 4, but just saying, hey, you want to try using scissors? I know my son loves using scissors. He doesn't really like writing yet. Writing is hard for him. And that's the thing with writing. Sometimes you just gotta say, please do your very best to make this one letter 3 times and then let it go. And then the next day, we're gonna do another letter 3 times. And you just get them to work the stamina up of their little fingers and holding the pencil correctly and working up the muscles there and the fine-tuned skills. Of course, you can do the button thing where it's like the little fine motor, I think they're felt kits that you can get. We had those, we did those, we did the lacing as well. You don't really have to spend a lot of money on it. I mean, you can get just one of them from like a dollar store and call it a day, because your kid may or may not even like it. And I really think that just being intentional and doing the time, spending the time with them is much more important than spending a ton of money on all these little things that they may not even be able to use much, because they go through all of this. This phase goes through so fast, like lightning fast. So I'll go ahead and put up on the screen kind of what I went over. This again is from birth to toddler time, to help to facilitate your toddler to be a reader. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.